Good morning and welcome to TVP World, coming to you live from Warsaw this Saturday morning. My name is Alex Semlinski and these are the latest updates in the world news. And we begin this morning with U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine Keith Kellogg, who will travel to Ukraine to take part in the country's Independence Day celebrations on Sunday. Reuters journalist Graham Slattery has reported on X. Slattery also wrote that Kellogg is expected to discuss a, quote, diplomatic flurry with leaders in light of recent developments concerning the war in Ukraine. Last Friday, U.S. President Donald Trump met with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Alaska, after which the American head of state said he had largely agreed with Putin on territorial swaps, sparking concern among Western partners and Ukraine. A couple of days later, Trump held a meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy and other European leaders. But the gathering failed to produce an agreement on concrete security guarantees for Ukraine. Envoy Kellogg's visit to Kyiv comes amid joint efforts of the U.S., Ukraine and Europe to work out safeguards for the war-torn country so that it can achieve long-term peace.
Again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much.
And as NATO Secretary General and Ukraine's president spoke in Kyiv, air raid sirens blasted in the Ukrainian capital. Putin launched missiles at the city, but it still remains unclear whether he will meet with Zelenskyy. We must ensure that Putin never again attempts to attack Ukraine, the NATO chief said, as he called for concrete security guarantees for Ukraine. Kaja reports more on that.
With no peace in sight, Ukraine needs lots of money to keep the country running and defend itself from the Russian onslaught. And this is where the EU comes in.
Today, the EU disburses over €4 billion to support Ukraine. This is our commitment not only to Ukraine's recovery, but to its future as a sovereign and democratic country.
But money is not the only thing Ukraine hopes to get from its partners. Security guarantees after the future end of fighting would be even better. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte promised just that in Kyiv on Friday, and according to him, the United States will be involved.
We are now working together, Ukraine, the Europeans, the United States, to make sure that the security guarantees are of such a level that Vladimir Putin, sitting in Moscow, will never, ever try to attack Ukraine again.
But exactly what these security measures would be remains unclear, and the lack of details is making Ukrainians nervous.
We are more or less in the same spot that we were in 2 weeks ago. The idea of a land swap is unworkable. Russia wants to be part of security guarantees for Ukraine, which is unacceptable.
Russia refuses to agree to any NATO troops safeguarding a truce. A bilateral meeting between President Zelenskyy and Putin is also looking increasingly unlikely.
We're going to see if Putin and Zelenskyy will be working together. That's like oil and vinegar.
With Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov telling NBC there is no meeting planned.
The Russians will try to do something else now to avoid a meeting. The issue is not just a meeting. The issue is that they don't want to end the war.
This is Lviv, only a 2-hour drive from Poland. It's as far from the front line in Ukraine as you can get. But even here, civilians aren't safe. These strikes are a constant reminder of Russia's true intention in the war.
Putin to be believed? This is just ridiculous.
But one person wants to believe, U.S. President Donald Trump.
I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand that, as crazy as it sounds?
This conviction may be waning though, especially in the face of another Russian strike hitting a US-owned electronics manufacturer in western Ukraine on Thursday.
This really snubs Trump even further. It seems like Trump probably took this personally to a degree, and now we've again seen some of the toughest rhetoric out of Trump.
The strike not only shows that the presence of US companies is in no way a security guarantee for Ukraine, it also undermines Trump's reputation as the world's best peace and deal maker.
He is motivated by his reputation, his image, and his ego first. If you can play on that psychology and actually say, Donald, they're making a fool of you. Donald, you're looking weak. Then that perhaps is the way to win him round.
Following the latest strikes, Trump compared himself on social media to former President Richard Nixon, scolding Russia's Cold War-era leader Nikita Khrushchev. Trump's finger is aimed at President Putin, as if to say, stop playing games. And he's now given him another informal deadline.
We will know within 2 weeks whether there will be peace in Ukraine. After that, we will have to maybe take a different tact.
This is yet another instance of the US president threatening tougher measures against Russia with no tangible results. And for Ukrainians, the sound of Russian rockets rings much louder than words. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
Ukraine's foreign ministry on Friday warned Minsk against staging provocations during the joint Belarusian-Russian Zapad military drills in September and called on European partners to remain vigilant. In a tweet on X, the ministry warned that the buildup of Russian troops on the borders of Ukraine in 2021-2022, which preceded the full-scale invasion, also took place under the cover of the joint military exercises of Russia and Belarus Zapad 2021. The ministry also warned Belarus not to approach the Ukrainian border and engage in provocation. Although Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has dismissed the idea that Minsk would use the exercises to attack its neighbors, the scheduled drills called Zapad 2025 have raised security concerns in neighboring Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. And speaking during a visit to a nuclear research center in Russia's Nizhny Novgorod region, Vladimir Putin said, "With the arrival of President Trump, I think that a light at the end of the tunnel has finally loomed." The Russian leader spoke about his meeting with Donald Trump in Alaska and expressed optimism about Russia-US relations that they could recover from recent lows. Putin praised Trump's leadership, saying that it is a good guarantee that Russia-US relations will be restored. He also revealed that August 15th provided an opportunity to discuss future economic cooperation between Russia and the US, particularly concerning mineral mining in the Arctic and possibly in Alaska. Putin also highlighted the operations of Russian liquefied natural gas producer Novatek and suggested American firms could join in, but did not reveal any more details. The White House has also indicated its openness to continued dialogue. And NATO's first standing naval group, NATO Maritime Group 1, has arrived in Riga. The Dutch frigate De Ruyter and the German supply ship Ron will be on a visit in the Riga passenger port until August 25th. The group, also known as SMNG-1, is responsible for protecting underwater infrastructure as part of the Baltic Sentry military activity. Its main mission, however, remains the ability to conduct a wide range of operations, ranging from collective defense to deterrence and crisis response. NATO standing naval groups are designed to provide the alliance with a standing naval force that is always at sea and ready to conduct missions in times of crises. The SMNG-1 ships are expected to resupply and cooperate with the Latvian Navy. Without Poland, no serious guarantees can be delivered to Ukraine. This is according to Bartosz Cichocki, the former Polish ambassador to Ukraine, who joined TVP World to discuss a recent claim by the US that Europe must take the lion's share of guaranteeing Ukrainian security once the war ends.
We are not there still to be ready to seriously speak of security guarantees. If we were serious about it, first of all, Poland should be invited to Washington talks Monday. Without Poland, geographically speaking, this is nature. Without Poland, none of serious guarantees can be delivered to Ukraine. But this is not, I would say we are still in a better position this week than before Anchorage summit, when the US was quite ambivalent. The US was defining herself as a kind of a neutral referee in this conflict. This week, President Trump strongly confirms, and Vice President J.D. Vance, that the U.S. will contribute this way or the other to military support to Ukraine.
And now we're moving to Serbia, where the Serbian president, Aleksandar Vučić, has signaled a change of tactics against those who have been taking to the streets of Serbia since last year. After using violence to crush the anti-corruption protests, Vučić now proposes a televised debate. Our Balkan correspondent Paweł Trzaskowski has more.
After months of anti-government protests that have been met with increasing police brutality, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has invited the representatives of protesters to a televised debate.
I believe it is very important that we all listen to one another. I believe it is of crucial importance that we renew dialogue in our country. I have tried to listen, perhaps not always enough, and I accept that as my mistake.
This act of conciliation comes after Vučić promised to show the demonstrators the full determination of the Serbian state by the end of Thursday. But some protesters' representatives said it's hard to imagine more brutality, as repressions administered by Vučić and his party were already very severe.
He had weapons pointed at protesters. He had us beating. One kid is in prison. They are not letting prisoners having their lawyers with them.
In fact, the past few weeks have been rife with documented police brutality. One video shows young men kneeling with their faces against a wall as police officers stand guard. The clip was even aired by a pro-government TV program, with a guest commenting that this is what happens when you break the law. The accounts of police brutality also include assaults on women. A march was organized in Belgrade this week supporting Nikolina Sindelic, who accused a police commander of beating her and threatening her with rape.
Women who take part in the protests are the most vulnerable group. We have no one to protect us. If I go to a protest, I should be able to turn to the police and say, "Officer, protect me," not be beaten, dragged into some basement of a government building, threatened with rape and forced to beg them to stop.
But as the deadline for more decisive action has passed, the government seems now to be extending its hand to the very people it vowed to oppress. Vučić's request for a dialogue might be prompted by the growing impatience of the European Union, which Serbia hopes to join. Negotiations are stalling because of the protests.
Reports of violence during recent protests in Serbia are deeply concerning. Advancing on the EU path requires that citizens can express their views freely and journalists can report without intimidation or attacks.
And earlier this month, during a meeting with Austrian Chancellor Christian Stocker, Vučić is said to have been warned that Serbia must refrain from violently repressing protests if it wants to remain a candidate for the European bloc. And now with Vučić saying,
I want to discuss the future of Serbia, all of us together, because that is what is best for our country.
He's signaling a major change in tactics for the preservation of his government. Paweł Trzaskowski for TVP World.
And now for some news on a lighter note. Poland's Warsaw Zoo was celebrating the hatching of a rare Malayan peacock pheasant chick. It's a species on the brink of extinction. Born in early August, the chick is currently under the watchful care of its devoted mother. To ensure that they can enjoy calm and uninterrupted bonding time, the zoo made the unusual decision to temporarily close one of its halls to visitors. The newborn chick stays close to its mother, often finding shelter under her tail feathers. The Malayan peacock pheasant is an exceptionally rare bird native to the forests of the Malay Peninsula. Visitors can now view the chick and its mother through large windows in the zoo's aviary corridor. So if you're in Warsaw, make sure to check out the Warsaw Zoo. I'm Alex Semlinski. Thanks so much for watching, but make sure to stay tuned to TVP World for more breaking news, updates, and commentary.